World News in 5.
Right now.
News and developments making headlines around the world in 5 minutes. World News in 5. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good day to all of our listeners here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This is World News in 5 and I'm your host, Steph Vicente. Iran is accusing the United States of a gross violation of the ceasefire after new American airstrikes hit targets in southern Iran. The BBC reports the U.S. Central Command said the strikes were carried out in self-defense, claiming Iranian missile sites and boats preparing to lay mines were targeted to protect American forces. Iranian officials said they hold Washington fully responsible for what they called aggressive and unjustified actions in the Hormuzgan region near the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. did not release exact strike locations, but reports suggest the attacks were near Bandar Abbas, a key port city and naval hub. Iranian state media also reported explosions in the area and said local authorities were investigating. Tehran further claimed its forces shot down a U.S. drone and fired on a fighter jet that entered Iranian airspace, though details remain unclear. The renewed military activity comes as both sides continue negotiations aimed at extending a fragile ceasefire that has largely held since early April. Despite the escalation, U.S. officials say a diplomatic agreement is still possible, though talks may take several more days to progress. In other news overseas, Israeli forces have begun ground operations beyond the so-called Yellow Line, the northern boundary of Israel's self-declared security zone in southern Lebanon, according to an Israeli military official. The CNN reports the officials said the expanded activity is targeted and aimed at pushing Hezbollah's explosive drone capabilities farther from the border in response to recent attacks on Israeli communities. The Yellow Line stretches east to west, several miles north of the Israel-Lebanon border and includes areas near the Litani River, with dozens of towns south of the line currently under Israeli control. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel is deepening its military operation in Lebanon, describing efforts to strengthen the security zone and protect northern Israeli communities. Israeli forces had largely avoided operating north of the line in recent weeks following U.S. request tied to ongoing diplomatic talks between Israel and Lebanon. However, officials say the latest escalation has been coordinated with Washington as Israel steps up action against Hezbollah's drone infrastructure. The Israeli military also reported striking more than 100 Hezbollah targets overnight and issued evacuation warnings for residents in parts of southern Lebanon, including the town of Nabatiyeh. Officials cautioned civilians to avoid areas near Hezbollah operatives and facilities, warning of continued military operations in the region. And finally, NASA has unveiled new details about its plans to deploy robotic landers, hopping drones, and lunar vehicles as part of a broader effort to establish a permanent base on the moon. According to BBC News, the space agency says several private companies, including Blue Origin, founded by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, have been selected to help build the equipment needed for future missions. NASA's goal is to return American astronauts to the lunar surface before U.S. President Donald Trump leaves office in the year 2028, intensifying pressure as a new space race with China accelerates. China, meanwhile, is moving ahead with its own lunar ambitions and is targeting a crewed moon landing by 2030 while continuing other space milestones such as launching missions to its Tiangong space station. NASA previously announced a $200 billion program to build a long-term lunar base powered by nuclear and solar energy at the moon's south pole by 2032. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman says these efforts signal that the United States intends to never give up on the moon again. The proposed lunar base would support scientific research, resource exploration, and future missions to Mars. However, many experts caution that NASA's timeline may be overly ambitious, with some predicting China could reach the lunar surface with astronauts before the United States returns. And that concludes today's edition of World News in 5. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this has been Steph Vicente. Good day and stay safe, everyone.
World News in 5.
Right now.
News and developments making headlines around the world in 5 minutes. World News in 5. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.